Excellent. Good morning, everyone who has just joined us. Thank you for giving us your time today to learn a little bit more about the new ITIL framework. My name is Jacob. I work from Quanta, as you can see from my background. I'm going to be sort of leading us today, and with me we have Adam and Adam, who are going to be our two subject matter experts. I'm just going to give another couple of minutes to let all of the rest of the various attendees filter in, just so we can hopefully get up to a full complement of people, and then I will start the session proper. So we're just going to have a few minutes while we wait. Whilst we do that, I'm going to just point out some things for yourselves that I will point out again. We are going to be having a Q&A session at the end of this event. And as part of a Q&A session, you may see at the top of your little Teams bar, there is an open Q&A button. If you have any questions that come about over the course of this webinar, that would be the place to raise them. So if you just type them in there, they'll stay in the chat, and then one of our two SMEs, one of our two Adams, can get back to that at the end of the session and hopefully be able to answer that question in a bit more detail. So yes, but obviously we have two presentations for you today. I imagine the vast majority of the more common FAQs will be covered as we go about. So yes, I'm just going to wait a few minutes and then I will ask Adam to lead us off. What was I going to say? Yes, while we wait, I just thought I would mention something. This webinar is not entirely related to, but somewhat comes off the back of an event we did in collaboration with PeopleCert and Quanta not that long ago, where we looked at what's new and what's the future in service management as a space, as a professional space. We had speakers from Quanta, from PeopleCert, and also from two universities who handle topics like neurodivergence within ITSM and how to accommodate for that better, how to arrange the way you do tasks to accommodate members of your team who might be neurodivergent. We had a talk from John Ireland about ITIL's path alongside his career and how he was able to use different frameworks, different versions of ITIL, and also different methodologies within it to expand the scope of what he was able to manage at any one time, which I thought was very interesting personally. We also had Adam Whitebauer from Quanta, who gave a talk on ITIL v5 and strategy. So how you could approach the new framework if you were, let's say, in charge of the strategy for a larger team or network. And then also we had a really fascinating talk from two subject matter experts within ITIL, Dimitri and Roman, who have written some of the frameworks around AI governance. So if any of those, we have all of those talks recorded. You can access them on the Quanta YouTube. Just type in Quanta training, or alternatively, if you would like to talk some more about these topics, you're more than welcome to get in touch with us to ask for the recordings. So I'll go over that again at the end, but if you can either contact your account manager if you have one, or you can just mail contact@quanta.co.uk, and that will come straight to me, and I'll happily answer any questions you might have or point you in the direction of those recordings if one of those topics sounds interesting to you. So I think that's about 4 past. I think we did have some more people who were due to arrive, but I think for the sake of time, I know we've got a lot to cover today, and people I imagine would like to get to the Q&A section. So I'll lead us off. So first things first, this meeting is being recorded. Just to let you all know, I imagine that for the recording will focus entirely on my screen and then Adam and Adam's and their presentations. It won't necessarily include anything to do with yourself, but it's just good that I let you know. That recording will be available after the event, so if there's a topic that you found really interesting and you want to refer back to that conversation, please let me know. Again, that's the email address I mentioned earlier. I'll mention it again at the end, and we'll happily be able to send that to you. Secondly, I would just like to mention that Adam WB from Quanta has very kindly offered to send out his section of the slide deck. So if you would like to get your hands on that after the event, I will again provide details, but that is an option that's available to you. However, that is enough from me. You've heard enough from a layperson. Let's hear from some smart people. So I'm just going to quickly introduce both of our speakers, and then I'm going to hand over to Adam Griffith from PeopleCert. So first things first, Adam Griffith, would you mind introducing yourself, your relevance to ITIL? Where's your expertise come from?
Thanks, Jacob. Good morning, everyone. My name is Adam Griffith. I am an ITIL architect with PeopleCert. As an ITIL architect, my role is to essentially contribute to the long-term vision and the roadmap for the framework, which really makes my job a combination of author, steward, but also I think that the biggest part of my role is listener, to understand what's happening in the industry, to talk to practitioners and strategists, and understand how service management, product and service management is evolving, and ensuring that best practice is evolving with it.
Thank you, Adam. And just quickly, I'll ask also, Adam WB, would you mind introducing yourself as well?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Whitebower. I've been with Quanta now for nearly 25 years, and in that time, I have been our lead trainer and consultant on anything that relates to IT service management and continual improvement. I come from a background, I started with platforms that nobody remembers anymore, like Novell NetWare. And I quickly learned in my time in IT that it's not really about the technology, it's about adding value to the businesses that we work with. And so I spend my time really trying to help organizations get more from their investment in IT. And ITIL is the vehicle that I believe is best placed to help us achieve that goal. Although there are various other things which we can use alongside it, but this is the main one, and it's what we're going to be talking about today. So thank you for your time, much appreciated. I'm going to hand back to Adam Griffith, who, having been involved in the writing and other things related to ITIL for such a very long time, is far better placed to give you a sense of why this really matters to us here in 2026. So many thanks indeed, Adam. Over to you.
Thanks, Adam, very much. Yeah, Adam and Adam, so it doesn't matter who you ask your question of, you're going to be right either way. But my part of our presentation today is going to focus on essentially what has been happening with the ITIL framework. How did we arrive at version 5? What are some of the challenges that we essentially hope that version 5 will address? And talk about really what makes up the version 5 qualification scheme. That way, Adam can then tell you a little bit more about how Quanta can get involved to help you to develop these capabilities as well. Over the past several years since the release of ITIL 4, we identified a number of trends that were occurring in the industry. The first being that volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity are becoming much more commonplace. They are becoming the norm, less the exception. AI, of course, has been likely one of, if not the biggest disruptor to our industry as well. We also have heard with ITIL 4 that there is oftentimes a disconnect between the practicality of the framework and its use in setting and executing on strategic direction as well. Also, in the last several years, really with every iteration of the ITIL framework, we have dealt with a number of persistent silos, and they have tended to change with each iteration. With ITIL version 3, we did not intend on the service lifecycle being how many organizations would tend to organize, creating a service strategy team, a service design team, etc., or that the processes in ITIL version 3 would be, again, how people would tend to organize. We wanted ITIL version 3 to break down some of those silos, to break down some of those barriers, and what it ended up doing was contributing to the creation of new silos. And so with ITIL 4, we followed suit again, trying to look at, instead of processes, practices that were multidimensional to, again, reduce and remove those barriers and constraints. And while I think we were successful with what we had intended with ITIL 4, there are new silos that have emerged since the creation of ITIL 4, namely product management and service management, somehow being seen over the last several years as being two distinctly separate disciplines or domains that have little in common. Our research actually proved that they have more in common than they do that actually separates them. And also, finally here, this growing attention on the human aspects of technology. The fact that experience is a vital part of the quality of services. So we knew as ideas, because our work as architects never stops, we are constantly iterating, like I mentioned, constantly talking to practitioners and other experts in the industry to understand what's evolving. And we knew as some of these ideas began to crystallize, some of these ideas began to, what we think, coalesce into a new version early on. We knew that we wanted to follow a number of these challenges as fundamental tenets for ITIL version 5. We knew that we wanted to ensure that ITIL version 5 was complexity native, that it was designed with complexity in mind, that it was able to adapt to those domains or those situations or scenarios where causality was more understood, as well as those situations and scenarios where causality was less understood and maybe things were more in a complex or chaotic state. We also knew that ITIL version 5, in order to have ongoing relevance, would need to be designed for AI, would need to accommodate for AI, and not as an add-on, not as some sort of a bolt-on, but natively as part of the framework. And I'll talk about how that has manifested in ITIL version 5 in just a moment. We also wanted to ensure that ITIL version 5 provided clear positioning at all levels for leaders strategically, for managers tactically, and for practitioners operationally. And we also engineered ITIL version 5 with the intent of helping to break down those silos, and namely in this case, creating points of integration between digital product and service management. And then finally, ensuring that we have accommodated in ITIL version 5 the importance of experience, recognizing the criticality of experience, and ensuring that we have defined ways to measure it and ways to improve it as well, focusing on those human aspects of service. And while our intent is that every iteration of ITIL builds upon the previous, and therefore every iteration of ITIL expands the horizon, it expands the conversation, because that's what's happening in our industry as well. Our intent with ITIL version 5 is that it is an evolution of ITIL 4, that it is not necessarily a revolution. It is not something that is completely brand new, that it builds upon the success of ITIL 4, that it focuses on aspects that we thought were opportunities to improve upon the framework, but also to continue to capitalize on aspects of the framework that continue to be very valuable and beneficial for our audience. And I'll talk about some of those things in the next few slides as well. Some aspects of ITIL version 5 that remain unchanged from ITIL 4, and those that are a pretty significant departure from ITIL 4 as well. We'll start the conversation with something that remains unchanged, and that is the guiding principles. The guiding principles originally were part of ITIL version 3 in the ITIL practitioner book and and training. There were 9 guiding principles then in ITIL 4. We simplified them into 7, and those 7 guiding principles persist in ITIL version 5. The guiding principles are recommendations. Recommendations that can guide an organization and can guide an individual to making the right decision at the right time. They are what I like to think of as universal truths. They are focus on value, start where you are, progress iteratively with feedback, collaborate and promote visibility, think and work holistically, keep it simple and practical, and finally optimize and automate. And so many of these are things that essentially we do every single day, in many cases without thinking of it. There are common sayings, euphemisms, analogies that people use that essentially are a reflection of a number of these guiding principles. If you've heard a saying like, you eat the elephant a bite at a time, well, that means that you progress iteratively with feedback, breaking down the monumental task into bite-sized, manageable pieces. Collaborate and promote visibility. We've likely seen that on a number of those inspirational team posters that say things like, no one of us is as smart as all of us. And we can look to, as Adam mentioned earlier, other complementary frameworks and bodies of knowledge that align with and to again complement ITIL best practice. Something like Lean, for instance, which would encourage us to keep it simple and practical and to optimize by getting rid of anything that essentially creates waste or does not contribute to value. So the guiding principles do remain the heart and soul of ITIL in version 5. I'm happy to report because I find the guiding principles to be as personally relevant as they are professionally relevant. Anytime I feel like I want to make sure that I make a good decision and I want to deliberate on that good decision, I always mentally reach for those guiding principles. But before we got started today, Adam and I were talking about ITIL 4 versus ITIL version 5. And I said, you know, one of the things that drives a lot of our conversations internally, drove a lot of our conversations to get to ITIL version 5, was if we could go back and do something different in ITIL 4. What do we wish that we could hop into the time machine and go back and maybe approach in a different way? And at the top of the list in those conversations was always the service value chain in ITIL 4. It was meant to be an operating model and maybe struggled to satisfy the requirements of an operating model. But more than that, it was a very dramatic departure from what had come before. In ITIL version 3, we had the service lifecycle. We said that at a particular level, services go through a pattern from cradle to grave. They, first of all, are conceived strategically. Then they next enter into a phase of design, followed by transition, operation, and continual improvement. And the service lifecycle from version 3 was very comfortable because logically it made sense at a particular level. Now, the problem, of course, with the life cycle in version 3 is that it doesn't necessarily always act as a good representation of reality. Someone operating at more of an executive level, at a higher level, would say that that is the pattern that services do in fact go through. But someone who's more close to the work, someone who's more at the operational level, would say that it doesn't always proceed in this sort of a nice, neat, linear fashion. But again, there's something about a life cycle that just logically makes sense. So we diverged away from the life cycle in ITIL 4, creating a flexible, modular value chain that could be more adaptable, that could be more reflective of reality. But it was a little bit of a more nebulous concept. And so in version 5, we think that we have found an appropriate balance. This was the original idea. If there's a particular concept in ITIL version 5 that was the anchoring concept that everything largely coalesced around to become ITIL version 5, it's definitely this. This is the ITIL product and service lifecycle. And to give you just a little bit of the backstory in terms of how we got here, we started by taking the ITIL 4 service value chain, and we identified some of the challenges with it. To create a model in ITIL 4 that was as simple as we could make it, we ended up creating these activities that were oftentimes a concatenation, an aggregation of activities. We combined, say, things like obtain and build. We combine things like deliver and support, things like design and transition. We combine them into a single activity represented in that model. And that was problematic for a lot of our audience because, well, different teams sometimes engage in design and transition separately. So the same people do not do both design and transition. There are separate teams for that. And so putting those together oftentimes felt awkward. So we started by breaking those apart and looking at them separately, and also doing that with the others as well. So deliver and support, obtain and build. And we created essentially a list of activities. And we then laid them out in a particular common order, a common cycle. That created the product and service lifecycle, which is the diamond that you see at the top of the 3 diagrams here on this slide. At a particular level, at this higher level, products and services do go through this particular pattern. There is, first of all, some activity of discovery, discovering what the needs and the requirements are, designing around those requirements, acquiring the resources needed to then build the products and services, to then transition those into the live environment where they will be maintained or operated and eventually delivered into the hands of users and providing then ongoing support for those products and services. Now that makes sense at a particular level. Again, so you could take anyone operationally or someone more at the executive level, and they would concur that yes, that is the pattern. But again, realistically, does it necessarily always happen in this linear fashion? And the truth is that life is messier than that. The reality is oftentimes very messy. Any of these 8 activities could create outputs that could serve as inputs into any of the other 8, not just the next one sequentially, but any of them feeding forwards or feeding backwards as well. So we started the idea with this life cycle, but then we turn around and we say, well, that life cycle can then be broken. So take those stages out of that life cycle and now look at them as individual activities. Break those 8 activities out of the life cycle and now look at them as stepping stones based upon your situation or scenario, based upon your operating model. Now, in this more of a value chain approach, use these activities as stepping stones based upon, again, the operating model, based upon the particular situation or scenario. Use any number of these 8. Maybe all 8 of them, maybe some portion of them. Use any number of them, any number of times to accomplish that flow of work that needs to happen. Now, again, relative to your operating model, you could certainly say that maybe more traditional IT might be what we would consider to be the full spectrum type of service provider that would leverage all 8. But then there are also organizations that exist like a managed service provider that maybe do very little of the discovery. Maybe they don't have any sort of connection with design. A managed service provider would resonate more with the some of those on that latter part of the life cycle, more of the deliver and support and operate aspects of those activities. Some sort of digital startup providing maybe an app in the App Store. They would certainly perform discover, design, they'd acquire it, they would build it, they would then transition it into that App Store, but delivering it into the hands of users, that's where another organization, in this case, whichever particular App Store we're talking about, would facilitate the delivery of that product and the services to the user. So one of the bigger changes in ITIL version 5 is essentially the retention of the service value system, but the replacement of its core element. So the service value chain in ITIL 4 becomes the value chain in ITIL version 5, made up of those 8 activities, which we can look at cyclically in the product and service lifecycle, or we can look at really more realistically independently in the value chain. As we talked to product managers, service managers, as we talked to each one of these camps, we identified that they actually have a lot more in common than they do that separates or differentiates them. They both look to create based upon customer needs, organizational expectations. They also are driving towards some sort of co-created value as well. So product management and service management really end up being 2 different sides of the same coin. So what we have looked at is exactly that in ITIL version 5, 2 sides of one solution, that digital products are the enablers of digital services. This is covered in Foundation. It's also covered in the advanced modules of ITIL product and ITIL service, ensuring that we understand as a service provider what the needs of customers are to design the right solutions, a combination of products and services. I also mentioned earlier the idea that what we deliver as a service provider is certainly essential, but how we deliver that as a service provider is also a critical aspect of service quality. And the quality of service certainly does translate into its capability and its capacity for co-creating value. And so as part of the qualification scheme in ITIL 5, we also have a dedicated experience module, which focuses on the principles of experience, but it really goes beyond, again, this notion of somehow making us aware of the psychology of customers and users. Again, looking at experience as a critical component of products and services. And as such, we also outline in this module some particular methods and metrics to use to be able to understand and measure experience, to create a number of hypotheses around what we observe, and then to build safe to fail experiments to work to improve the experience as well. Another part of ITIL version 5, based upon some of those challenges that we started the conversation off with, is this notion of ensuring that there is strategy, that there is relevance strategically to the framework and also to the qualification scheme and to the learning and to the content as well. So in the ITIL strategy publication in ITIL version 5, we look at 2 ongoing continual cycles. One, developing strategy, and the other, implementing or executing on that strategy. This is a reflection of what I mentioned earlier as well in those challenges, that VUCA really is the new norm. The ITIL strategy publication in version 5 isn't just engineered to address the executive level of the organization. It's also been designed to accommodate those that are aspiring to that level as well. Foundation, product and service, experience, strategy, as well as another that I'm going to talk about in just a moment. The core of ITIL version 5 has been released. There is one part of the qualification scheme, though. There is one part of ITIL version 5 that we are still working on that is still actively in development, and that is the AI governance module. We mentioned that this framework needed to be AI native. And while we embed AI throughout all of the publications and all of the training, even say in experience, how does AI help to complement achieving higher levels of user experience and customer experience? But we will also have a dedicated publication within the version 5 qualification scheme focusing on governing AI. The research has told us that this is really where the opportunity exists, that this is really where the primary need exists. Out of the organizations that have implemented some form of AI, some AI solutions, less than 1/5 of them have also implemented some aspects of governance for that AI solution as well. And this isn't just about controlling the technology. This is also things like data governance as well, the quality and the accuracy of the data that we feed into those LLMs. So more information on this is forthcoming. If you would like to get a bit of a head start, the QR code on this slide actually links you to about a 20-page white paper that we created that really was the original motivation or inspiration for creating a much larger module. So if you want to see, again, kind of where we're starting from, take a look at that white paper. The practices in ITIL version 5, we still have at this point 34 management practices. They remain unchanged, although our roadmap for 2026 will be to go back and to refresh those practice guides again. So more information on these is certainly forthcoming, but all 34 are certainly still available via the PeopleCert Plus membership portal, but also with the associated training as well. Another module that Adam is going to tell you more about it in just a moment as well is ITIL transformation. This is another topic that has been one that we've been working on for quite some time. Its original iteration was a book that is still available via the membership portal. QR code there links you to it, called How to Implement. And it was all about, again, this practicality. One of the bigger complaints with ITIL 4 was the fact that it was too conceptual, that it was too theoretical, that it didn't give me enough actionability. And so creating the How to Implement book was a direct response to that. How exactly do I undertake transformations? So How to Implement has become, in ITIL version 5, updated to become ITIL transformation. One of the bigger parts of the transformation book and module is the transformation model. I love the continual improvement model. The continual improvement model is terrific when you want to make improvements by the system. When you want to make improvements to any of the 4 dimensions. But what happens when you want to make improvements that are part of a larger initiative, part of a more complex effort? What do you undertake then? Does the continual improvement model, does that still hold up if you want to improve all 4 dimensions relatively simultaneously? What about not making improvements by your value system, but what if you want to make improvements to your value system? Well, all of that seems to indicate that there is another level of scope and complexity that we now really know as the idea of transformation. The transformation model is a highly adaptable model that allows you to create a roadmap for a transformation consisting of multiple initiatives. Some of those will proceed in a very ordered fashion. Others you will need to deal with differently because they're more complex or they're more chaotic as well. The transformation model is another solution. It's another tool in the toolkit when, again, that level of scope and complexity increases. Adam will tell us in just a moment as to the relevance of the transformation model and the transformation module in the qualification scheme and for the designations as well. But hopefully, again, what you have heard in the time that I've been talking is that there are aspects of ITIL version 5 that are in fact new. And then there are also those portions of ITIL version 5 that persist from previous iterations. So on this slide, I've just kind of maybe did a bit of a compilation of models and diagrams and figures here to represent that. We see the things like here, the service value system, the SVS, but also now replacing that core element of the value chain. We see some persistent concepts like the 4 dimensions in the bottom right-hand corner, the service relationship model in the upper left-hand corner, but we also see other new aspects here, like in the upper right-hand corner, the AI capability model, or what we call the 6C model, which is described in that AI governance white paper that I mentioned earlier as well, which is available at itil.com.
Fantastic.
So a bit of an overview.
Sorry.
Let me hand things back to Jacob now. Jacob, please go ahead.
Sorry, sorry, Adam, I mistimed that completely.
No.
Was there anything else you wanted to add before I?
No.
Grand. Thank
No.
you. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Adam.
Long enough.
Thank you very much, Adam. That's very engaging. Obviously, for those in the audience, if you have any questions on the back of that, if there's anything that's piqued your interest that you'd like to know more about, either from the training side of things for Quanta or from the framework side of things from PeopleCert, please feel free to write those questions down in the Teams chat, and then we can get to those once Whitebauer has finished his presentation. But I am just going to hand over to Mr. Whitebauer now, who is now going to approach the new framework version 5 from the education side of things and the certification side of things. So yes, I will hand over to him now.
Thank you very much, Jacob, and many thanks indeed, Adam, for all those insights into what's new, what's changed, and also what's the same with regard to ITIL version 5. So I'm going to take over and talk about this from the ATO, the Accredited Training Organization perspective, in terms of what it means for us and what we can offer to help empower and upskill people within your organizations and help them make the best use of ITIL version 5 to hopefully add more value through products and services within your organizations. There have been some significant changes, as Adam alluded to, and I think what we've got here with the version 5 qualification scheme, just before we dive into the individual courses, is probably, as things have been over the last couple of versions, I think one of the clearest, easiest to understand sets of modules in terms of the way that they've been labeled and the way that the content's actually been organized. If any of you lived through the version 3, where we had books and modules that were aligned with the life cycle that Adam was referring to earlier on, that they were relatively straightforward to get to grips with. But then we had books which were written to cover cross-module areas like plan, protect, and optimize. Or in ITIL version 4, we had books which had titles like create, deliver, and support, or direct, plan, and implement, which, talking to customers, one of the things which I think became clear was that it wasn't always obvious exactly which of those modules would be right, depending on the outcomes and objectives of the organizations. The qualification scheme, as we see it now, and my perspective as part of a training organization, is that we've got clarity over what areas of the framework are being covered, and the titles of the books hopefully give us clear direction as to where to go in terms of which are the relevant modules. What we're going to be going through in the next few minutes is how the designations, these have actually existed since ITIL 4, so how they still exist, but which courses and which modules are relevant to those designations, and what that means for you in terms of which courses might be relevant, who you might be thinking of in terms of which modules are relevant to their jobs, their roles, and what they cover. Now, with that in mind, we're going to start with the one that I think we all expect to see with ITIL, indeed with any product from PeopleCert, which is the foundation level. Now, the foundation level is both very similar to what we've experienced previously, but also it has a couple of very significant differences. The first thing that you may notice is that it is actually now a shorter course than has been true previously. Now, the reason for that is because this version of the ITIL Foundation course actually is more focused on some of the really key ideas that Adam introduced, particularly ideas that we saw on the last slide that Adam showed there, around the guiding principles, the relationship model, the 6C model, and in particular, and I have to say this is for me probably the biggest, most significant update, and I think it's one of the things that makes ITIL 5 particularly useful, is that update to the service value chain. So we've now got the digital product and service model with those 8 steps that Adam was talking about earlier on. Delegates attending the foundation course will be grounded in the core concepts of what ITIL version 5 brings to the table in terms of all of those areas. What we're not doing so much with foundation is actually expecting delegates to go away with a deep, detailed understanding of the practices, in particular, the processes that are bound up within those practices. There's a sense that individuals attending foundation would have to learn significant amounts of information and detail about practices that may not necessarily be relevant, but also as ITIL is evolving, and evolution, not disruption, is very much the mantra that we believe is right for ITIL version 5, that in fact, it's about how we do things as an organization to create value with our customers. It's about the approach, the principles, the models that we can use and adapt to our organizational context. And then with that, that's reflected in the foundation course. IT service management nowadays isn't just about IT, it's for everybody. Anybody involved in delivering products and services can benefit from these approaches to the way that we work. Following a product development model, I mean, I'm here in Worcester today. So one of the big businesses here in Worcester is Bosch up the road, where they make boilers. That's still a product. And how that product is developed, manufactured, how it is put into the market and supported, that is exactly the same as how we might deliver a digital product. And so it's there for everybody. This course, therefore, it could be beneficial to anybody within the organization that touches the idea of product development, service delivery, and hopefully with that in mind, the benefits of everybody speaking the same language, understanding those core models of the service value chain, of the 6C model for AI, the guiding principles. I wholeheartedly agree with what Adam said. The guiding principles for me feel like one of the most significant changes that was made to ITIL over all the 20 plus years that I've been dealing with it. And likewise, I agree. I've got customers out there that I've seen have printed out the guiding principles with a few modifications, put them up so that they are highly visible for everybody to be able to see them so that they're working with them. So I can't emphasize enough how much I think there is real value for everybody that touches these areas of focus to engage with the foundation material. And it is now slimmed down so that practices that may not be relevant to individual job roles don't have to be covered here, while giving everybody that common grounding. So this is our starting point. Now, in the qualification scheme, each of the other modules is related to a particular track or designation. So I'm going to talk to you about the other modules and courses in their respective tracks, with the exception of the transformation module, which actually covers all of them. We'll come to that one last. So we're going to start with the managing professional designation. And generally, this particular designation and the modules that are related to it are really for people that want to demonstrate that they understand service management across the organization. So Adam mentioned how important it was to get away from the siloed mentality. And I think that was absolutely key. One of the conversations that I had when ITIL 4 came along was with one of the authors of the ITIL 4 Foundation book, Stuart Rance. And in that conversation, it was very similar to what Adam said. How can we get away from an overly prescriptive and siloed approach to service management and get people to understand that we need to work across various disciplines and areas of the service provider organization to make sure that we're working together effectively. The version 5 take on the managing professional designation is intended to do exactly this. Yeah. Look at the unified product and service lifecycle that we've already discussed and understand how they work together to deliver both coherent digital products that actively support value through service delivery. In this section, we cover the product development, and that's based on that product life cycle that Adam was looking at. The service course looks at services using the same lens of that model. And then experience makes us really focus on the key things that matter from a human perspective and gives us advice and guidance on how we can make sure that our digital products and our services are actually ones that people want to engage with and that they can generate value from. This designation, like all of them, requires you to complete the transformation course so that we've got that practical guidance on how we can actually utilize what's in those 3 modules to better deliver value to the organization. The product course, particularly relevant to people that are in product development, not just about people that are in software development roles, but nevertheless, people that are in software development, but also in service design, in architecture roles, may all benefit from actually attending the product course. As businesses are more and more based around digital products and digital capabilities, this course, which helps align the idea of product development and perhaps aligns with some of the other approaches. I know Adam alluded to it there. I was going to mention DevOps as something which organizations are adopting, and product as a module very much aligns with some of the thinking which we've got with that approach to product development as well. Whereas the service module, using the same model, takes perhaps a slightly broader view than the product module, but nevertheless, focusing on the end-to-end delivery of value through services with support from the digital product and service lifecycle, and making sure that we've got those cross or end-to-end capabilities for delivering services. Both of those modules are based on that digital and product lifecycle. And so people that are attending product and service will ideally come away with significant understanding of what that model is and how to adopt and adapt it into their organization. Add that to the experience module, where we focus on concepts such as the service lifecycle from the customer's perspective and the customer journey, and look at the human elements and making sure that we consider the needs of humans in terms of interface and experience. And we see that as a key element of the value of services. That rounds out the managing professional section in terms of what is unique to this particular track. All of these courses could be beneficial to individuals that are aspiring to move into more senior roles within an organization, but that doesn't mean that they're not relevant to people that are in service design, architectural, product development, service desk, other roles that want to move up and understand what it means to deliver end-to-end services and value from them. I'm not going to talk about transformation at this point because that covers everything. So I'm going to move on to something which Adam mentioned is particularly significant in the way that we now look at managing digital products and services in modern organizations, which is making sure that we've got the right strategy in place and that we can address VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity within our organizations. The strategic leader designation covers individuals that have demonstrated significant understanding of how service management is affected by and how we can address the challenges that are raised with this environment, and helps by giving them tools to address those areas of focus. This designation, like all of them, starts with the foundation. And then we have a specific strategy course that builds on what we understand in terms of those core concepts in order to make sure that we can better understand and align what we're doing with our digital products and services strategically with the aims and goals of our businesses, to create a culture which recognizes the importance of excuse me, those digital products and services to the business strategy, and the role that AI can play in terms of shaping our strategy going forwards. As Adam alluded to, this module isn't just for people that are in middle and senior management positions. The strategy module as it is now, my view is it's been repositioned slightly from the old digital and IT strategy module, which was aimed perhaps more at senior management and C-level roles, to actually be more relevant to people throughout the organization that can engage and help support the shaping and delivery of the strategy that we have for our digital products and services. So that makes it more relevant across the organization, perhaps, than the old module that we saw previously. Like the managing professional designation, this one also requires the transformation module, and I'll come back to that a little later on. Now, the modules that I have discussed briefly with you so far, the one thing that they have in common is that they make reference to and provide advice and guidance to some degree about some of the practices, the 34 practices that were mentioned earlier on, that have largely been retained from ITIL 4. However, there has long been this recognition that we do need to be able to do a deeper dive and build additional understanding and capability around certain core practices. And so the practice manager designation is there, and the courses that are bound up within this designation are there to help us understand and get that deeper dive into 15 of those core practices from the 34 that we've got. Indeed, I've just finished delivering plan, implement, and control. So I've been talking about change enablement, deployment and release management, and IT asset management and configuration management, which are all absolutely key practices in the delivery of digital products and services. Individuals that need that deeper expertise and understanding of how practices provide advice and guidance across the 4 dimensions of service management, that want to make better use of the resources that are available to us in terms of our people, our information and technology, our value streams and processes, and leverage the relationships that we've got with our third parties, our partners and suppliers. These are the modules that are going to provide that deeper dive. The people who require that and need to make sure that practices meet the needs of the organization on an ongoing basis. Monitor, support and fulfill existed in ITIL 4 and at the moment remains as it was previously. I'm not aware of any moves to change that, and that goes for all of these, but we will, as Adam was alluding to earlier on, see updated versions of these practices to align them with ITIL version 5 thinking and the way that we're looking at service management now with this latest version. Monitor, support, fulfill. For some customers may well be something that they see as a logical progression from the foundation course because it covers incident management, problem management, service desk, service request management, and the monitoring and event management practices that for many, many, many years, many versions of ITIL have been seen as being perhaps core capabilities. And so we fully expect to be looking at bundling and running the foundation course with the monitor, support and fulfill course as a week-long entity in order to provide both that solid grounding in concepts, but also those core practices that organizations look for in terms of skill. Also recognizing that we don't necessarily need everybody within the organization to have those capabilities. So if you'll excuse me, my timer has just gone off telling me I need to shut up in a minute, but I will be quick. Plan, implement and control, as I've just mentioned, covers change enablement, subject dear to my heart. I originally, before I fell into IT, as so many people do, actually came from a manufacturing background. And believe you me, change enablement is absolutely key in that environment. But also looking at practices that enable us to realize change and make sure that it's controlled effectively. So deployment, release, service config, and IT asset management are also key in this particular module. And collaborate, assure, improve is there for people that are inhabiting roles like business partnering or business relationship manager roles, dealing with third parties, and are looking to make sure that we've got the right contracts and agreements in place, as well as, and something which is absolutely fundamental, of course, looking to make sure that we are generating a culture and driving continual improvement through the organization. This particular designation of practice manager needs you to look at the foundation course and then one of the 3 modules there, depending on which practices are most relevant to the role and the individual that's looking at them. So you don't have to do all of those, but we do require the transformation module in order to achieve practice manager. Now, all of those designations require the transformation course. And in truth, there's not an awful lot I can really add to what Adam said there. This book, I remember the practitioner book with great fondness in version 3, where people were genuinely asking the question, this is great, but how do we actually bring it into the organization? How do we use this as the basis of improving our service delivery capability? And how do we drive this forwards? So transformation is required for all of them, because whether we're looking at improving our practices, whether we're looking at building greater insight into end-to-end delivery of value through the digital product and service model, or whether we're looking at improving our strategic approach within the organization, we need to know how we can actually drive that through the organization and be able to take on board these lessons and learnings from these modules. And that's where the transformation module comes in. All of the modules above foundation are going to be 3 days long. And so they will fit nicely into this idea of bundling with the foundation according to what customers actually need and what they find specifically relevant to them within their organizations. There are a few questions which have come up an awful lot since version 5 was raised. And so I'm going to just touch on a few of the things that you may be asking, having gone through those courses briefly. First of all, many of you may already hold existing qualifications or designations. Now, if you already hold a previous foundation, ITIL 4 foundation, then that is actually that opens the door to the higher level courses already. So you don't have to do the foundation to go up to those modules that we've just been talking about within those designations. If you hold managing professional or strategic leader modules, then they haven't suddenly become worthless. As Adam alluded to, we are evolving. There is certainly new thinking, and there are elements of previous versions of ITIL that we may have de-emphasized, but nevertheless, the core of the thinking is very, very valuable, but they don't contribute to the existing designations. If you have a designation, then you can bridge across from previous designations. Those of you that may hold practice manager qualification or strategic leader or managing professional or ITIL 4 master qualifications, there are tracks that you can take to move across. Practice manager and strategic leader holders can do the ITIL version 5 transformation course and the associated exam. Those of you that hold managing professional or have reached the heady heights of ITIL 4 master can do the managing professional bridge with the exams that are associated with that course. So your investment in ITIL 4 in previous versions, it's not that it became irrelevant or that it wasn't worthwhile. There are approaches there that you can take to move across. Another question that we often get asked is what courses, if I was sticking with ITIL 4 that I was planning on doing, what do they look like in the new scheme? Now, this is, I'd like to think, an informed opinion, because there is no official mapping that I'm aware of from PeopleCert. Although I have to say, Adam, if you know different, then please stop me. But I believe that there isn't one. However, broadly speaking, foundation maps, as you might expect, to foundation. Anybody looking at create, deliver, and support from the ITIL 4 canon would probably benefit from doing service and also possibly product as well. High velocity IT, I believe perhaps would be most relevant to for people to do product, but again, service may also be relevant there. Direct plan and improve, and also the digital and IT strategy course, strategy and transformation. Actually, again, both of those probably relevant there. How to implement aligns, I believe, most closely, and Adam alluded to this, with transformation. Like I say, this is not a formal or in any way sort of official view of how the courses overlap, but nevertheless, what I believe is the relationship between them is as close as you're going to get. Some of you may be aware of, and Adam alluded to in the conversation we had before, the acquiring and managing cloud services and the other extension modules. There is only the AI governance extension module now, because the advice and guidance in acquiring and managing cloud services, sustainability and digital and IT services, that's now been rolled into core guidance, which I think is absolutely great. Particularly the sustainability, that was a module that's very close to my heart there. We can see that because it's actually become part of how we judge service quality and value in the new version. For IT asset management and business relationship management, they are now rolled into the relevant practice manager modules. IT asset management within plan, implement, and control, and business relationship can now be found as relationship management within the Collaborate, Assure, and Improve course. That is a quick walk through the courses, the modules, how they relate to the designations. Yeah, very brief overview of what you'll find in those courses. I'm looking at the Q&A section, which I've just popped up in my meeting. So I'm just going to have a quick look at some of the posts there. While I'm doing so, Adam G, was there anything in the questions that I think possibly the question that we've got there regarding what does the AI framework look like in ITIL 5, how applicable to Copilot Studio and ITOM event management might it be? I don't know if you want to pick that one up a moment while I just have a quick look at some of the others.
Sorry, gents, just before you launch, just to let the rest of the people in the call know, I know we've run over a little bit, so I do apologise, but that's all right. I'm going to allow delegates to have their camera and audio on as well. So if people want to ask a question, but they would rather, kind of put a face to name or something like that, I will allow people to speak now and put their camera on as well if they like. But yes, I just wanted to mention that as an alternative option for people to ask questions if they wished. But yes, I will hand back over to you, Adam Griffiths. Do apologise.
No worries, Jacob. Thank you very much. Adam, may I steal the screen share from
you?
You
may indeed. Let me just stop sharing mine. There we go.
So the question was, what does AI essentially look like? What does the AI framework look like in ITIL version 5? How is it applicable to the practical side of things with examples like Copilot and ITOM? So it was very, very small on the last slide that I had there, but this is the AI capability model, or what we refer to as the 6C model. And this model defines the capabilities that are imbued in AI solutions. And Copilot is a great example, because these 6Cs, when we see AI solutions, they don't just inhabit, in many cases, just one of these. In many cases, AI solutions cross a number of these capabilities. Creation, where AI creates new resources. Curation, where it will improve the existing resources. Clarification, where it analyzes. Cognition, where it looks to draw conclusions. Communication and coordination, or orchestration. And so Copilot actually is a great example that, again, could represent, and does represent in terms of how it's used, multiple of those 6Cs in the capability model. Now, how does that represent, or how does that manifest into something that is practical? In the AI governance white paper, which is available now at ITIL.com, and again, the forthcoming AI governance book, as well as we also have an AI Unlocked module on our membership platform as well. But all of those solutions contain the capability to actually practically apply governance. So in the AI governance white paper, we identify a number of key risks and the low, medium, high relevance of those key risks to these 6Cs. And so if we identify, say with Copilot or with ITOM, which of the particular capabilities are being leveraged, you can then identify which of those key risks are likely to be higher risks, and again, what sort of a governance approach to take as a result of that. So again, that's a little bit of a brief answer, but I would encourage Mickey in this case to take a look at that white paper at ITIL.com. In fact, I'd encourage everybody to take a look at that white paper to take a look at, again, how we take those 6Cs and build a governance framework around them.
It's a great answer. Thank you very much for that,
Yes.
Adam. Yeah,
Thank you, Adam.
Really
I think
interesting that. Thank you.
Yes, I think there was also another question that looked like it was more relevant for Quanta.
Yeah.
Releasing
Just
course
having a
dates for
look
the
at
ITIL
that. So,
modules. Yeah.
Yep. So we have dates for the ITIL version 5 foundation all through 2026 that are already on our diary. And we will have dates released for the other modules very, very soon, as in literally within about the next week. We will be doing a big release of all the other modules. So all the dates are coming soon, as in very, very soon. So, yeah. But we don't have all the dates on the diary yet. We want to make sure we've got a coordinated release, partly because we're still having discussions around particularly how we want to coordinate certain modules with each other, particularly foundation with some of the practice manager, and particularly the product and service modules as well. So we'll be releasing dates very shortly, but really it's about making sure that we get the right, not just the right dates, but the right combinations to best meet customer needs. So bear with us. We will have dates for you very, very soon.
I'm on mute, so sorry, I've just realised that. We've literally just had a question just now from Richard Parsons. I was going to wrap things up there. But I think that's a really great question to end on from Richard Parsons. So I'll just read that out for the two of you. And then I'll let, I think, whoever wants to jump in. For teams already working with ITIL or ITIL 3 and 4 practices, what would you say is the single most important thing we should start doing differently because of or inspired by ITIL 5? Adam, G, do you have a take on that?
I do.
Okay.
So my quick answer here is end-to-end understanding. Far too often, regardless of version, regardless of the practice or process, there is a habit that we tend to focus on the work that we do, the work that is meaningful to us, which means that oftentimes we don't really understand what always has triggered our work, so we don't always have good visibility as to what's happened before. And in terms of our output, our work product, we don't always really see where that goes either. So this myopic sort of a tunnel vision view of things is fairly common. ITIL version 5 embraces with the product and service lifecycle this end-to-end understanding. And so I went through a couple of examples earlier of some operating models that maybe would focus on only a portion of those 8 activities that does not somehow, however, don't misunderstand that as, well, you don't need to be aware of. If you're a managed service provider, you don't need to be aware of what the requirements for that solution are. Managed service providers can certainly enhance what they do by maybe not having a direct hand in the discover, design, and acquire steps of that solution, but it's that holistic understanding end to end that I think is really beneficial for all organizations of all types, all operating models, regardless of your role, regardless of which particular practice or practices you tend to inhabit. Adam?
Well, you've picked on almost exactly the same thing that I was going to say. And I know I've lost track actually of the number of times I said end to end when I was delivering my portion of the presentation. So, but as we were saying before we started, Adam, I felt the improvement to the SVC and the new combined digital products and service models give us that end-to-end view, make sure that all relevant stakeholders and roles that need to be engaged, not just in their little silo, but actually across the whole of the value stream. That's so key. But I'd also, from my perspective, say embedding experience as a key consideration through the model is so important, and something which organizations, some are making great strides with experience, but there are still some pretty poor digital experiences out there. And so I would just add that really, but otherwise you said it better than I ever could, I suspect, Adam. So end to end. Yeah.
Adding experience is spot on, but it's also why I paid Jacob to make sure that I went first, so I didn't run into that kind of a situation.
Easiest 20 quid I ever made.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adam. Well, thank you, Adams, both. That has been very elucidating. I'd also like to thank everyone who joined us and people who went out of their way to say goodbye as well. I think that's, we don't get that very often these days, so I massively appreciate that. I think I will end things here because we have slightly run over, as is traditional. But again, I'd like to thank everyone for their time. Like I said, this meeting has been recorded, so we'll be making that recording available, possibly on YouTube, possibly via email, just to those who would like it. And if you would like the slides, please feel free to get in touch. That's contact@quanta.co.uk. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend all, and I'm sure we will speak again shortly. Ta-ra.
Thanks all.
Thank you, folks. And thanks for your time.